You are listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Mile High Huddle's Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman.
Freeman is back there, blocked by Leary, caught for the touchdown! A 2-yard laser! Fumangali from the University of Wisconsin. Third and goal at the 1. Lindsey is in. Janovich, the fullback. Janovich hit. Nice big hit there by Kendrick. He continues to dig. He's not. They call a touchdown. They call a touchdown on a 1-yard jump inside.
Trying to set up the screen to his tight end, Noah Fant. He's got some room to run. He cuts it back at the 10. Fant takes it in. Touchdown, Denver. The first NFL touchdown for the rookie tight end out of Iowa. End zone caught. Touchdown, Cortland Sutton. His 5th career touchdown, but his first here in Denver.
And now, here are Broncos country's football priests to help you exorcise the demons of another doomed season.
I have exorcised the demons. This house is clear.
Okay, and we are live. Let's let this settle in just for a second. Make sure our connections are good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime, my co-host. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, we made yesterday's episode kind of the free agency rumor mill roundup. And Monday, things got kind of taken to a whole other level because Adam Schefter reported that the Detroit Lions have been receiving phone calls, have been accepting calls on Darius Slay, the cornerback, and that it's been from, quote, multiple teams per Schefter. Then when you start doing the math and you go back in time and you think in December how Mike Kliss reported that the Broncos had talked to the Lions about a straight-up trade. You give us Darius Slay, we'll give you Chris Harris. It ended up stalling out, didn't get consummated. But if the Broncos were interested in Darius Slay, then it stands to reason they're probably one of those, quote-unquote, multiple teams that have been on the phone checking out what it's going to take to get Darius Slay.
One of the rumors, if I'm not mistaken, though, was going to trade Chris Harris Jr. for Darius Slay. Now they can't do that, Chad. So Chris Harris is a free agent. They'd have to trade for the guy. And this is where I am not on board with the idea. You have to give up a pick, probably a second-round pick, and from reports that we've seen, he wants $15 million per year. You can either pay someone like Chris Harris Jr. or Byron Jones and save the draft pick, or draft a corner and save the cap space. But why devote two of those types of capital to one player who's going to be 30 after this coming up season, who's not that much better by metrics, Chad, than Chris Harris Jr., and he's a non-premium guy. The Broncos still are not one cornerback away from being a title contender. So to give up both of those sets of capitals, I don't really fall in line with that.
I understand it. What you're saying, it makes sense to me. I just think back to how badly this is in need for the Denver Broncos, especially if Chris Harris Jr., who we'll talk about, he did a radio interview with the Fan today. We'll talk about that. If he ends up leaving, man, this turns into a DEFCON 1 level need for the Denver Broncos. And at that point, it becomes, to me, more of a question or closer to the idea of what wouldn't you pay to get a true lockdown corner. Now, we can sit and debate whether or not Darius Slay qualifies for that. And there are some numbers that I want to go over here in just a few minutes that can kind of help us figure out which of these four corners that are in question here. I'll explain each one here in just a few minutes. Which one makes the most sense for the Denver Broncos? But either way, Zach, they're going to have to pay the premium. It's a cost of doing business. If you want to have a true shutdown corner where it's a set and forget, you don't have to worry about it. Chris Harris Jr., I think it can still be argued he's one of those caliber of corners, even though he probably wasn't used the best in Fangio's scheme last year. But nevertheless, Elway has shown over the years, he paid Champ Bailey, big fat extension back in 2011, paid Aqib Talib, offered big money to, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I almost said Darius Hayward-Bay. Anyway, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, he turned it down, and then they ended up paying Aqib Talib instead. DRC went to New York. Talib came and won a Super Bowl. So he's not opposed, Zach, to paying top dollar to have that kind of peace of mind at corner. It's a question at this point of who's it going to be.
But is he opposed to paying top dollar and also surrendering a high round draft pick, which he values like gold? And that's where I have no problem paying Darius Slay or trading a second round pick for the guy. But for both, that's where it falls short for me. So we'll have to see how the Broncos approach it in the coming days or weeks.
We still have more on this subject we want to get to. First, guys, just a couple of quick matters of business. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter. Simple, easy to do, at Huddle Up Pod, if I can find the banner here. It is the best way. This thing's all ski wampus. The best way, as you can see there, at Huddle Up Pod, to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the show in real time. And then a reminder, you guys, don't forget, I'm going to put this in the comment stream. Head on over to huddleuppod.com so that you can get yourselves a nice little piece of swag. I'll do a quick share screen so we don't have to worry about it later in the show. I'll give you guys a quick preview of what's available. We've been steadily adding products, as you can see here. These 3 items at the top, the way it's ordering them, are in order of what's been the most popular. The dark blue hoodie, it says Mile High Huddle. Broncos country is not a geographic location. It's a state of being. The football priest hat. These 3 are the top, and then we just recently added this girl's T-shirt as well. #football priest. So another thing that you can do, obviously this exists only because of your demand. We put it together. We got it up and rolling. Great organic way to help support the show and what we're working on here at the Huddle Up Podcast. So check that out when you get some time.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Living with chronic pain is the worst. It's more than a feeling of discomfort. It can affect your whole life. Many of our listeners probably have some type of pain that has prevented them from relaxing and sleeping or stopped them from exercising. I know I have. Perhaps it's been ongoing for a few weeks now and hasn't improved with any of the treatments they've tried. Enter Omax Health. If you're looking to get rid of nagging muscle and joint pain immediately while providing long-lasting recovery, then you need to try the natural breakthrough pain relief solution, CryoFreeze CBD Roll-On, developed by Omax Health. This non-prescription, triple-action pain relief roll-on is specially formulated to block pain receptors, reduce inflammation, and provide and improve muscle and joint flexibility. The best part is, this 100% natural CBD-powered remedy works its magic within 10 minutes of application, and the relief lasts up to 8 hours, which is much longer than the over-the-counter products. Omax Health is offering our listeners 20% off a full bottle of CryoFreeze CBD Pain Relief Roll-On, plus free shipping. This discount, you guys, also applies towards any product site-wide. Just go to omaxhealth.com today and enter code OVERTIME. That is OMAXhealth.com and enter code OVERTIME to get 20% off CryoFreeze and site-wide. All right, Zach, we got the super chats coming in. I don't want to neglect anybody. So before we get to some of the other topics on this I wanted to dive into, let's grab, snap, you guys, we have a new champ on Super Chat. Machiavelli, the GOAT, now has the record. Holy smokes. Dude.
What an ironic name that is, Chad. That perfectly fits
indeed.
him.
The GOAT, indeed. It's time to let Chris walk and trade for Slay. The Lions give the Lions an early third-round pick, sign Slay 4-year extension, $15 million a year. And he's 2 years younger, plus he's a known commodity. What do y'all think? We got 3 picks in the third round. Machiavelli, dude, thank you so much for that support. That means the world to us. Like, I'm
incredible.
Stunned.
Yes, that's amazing.
You on the record now, dude. You got the biggest super chat of all time on the show, and we appreciate you. Can't say it enough, my brother. If it took a third rounder to get Slay, considering that the Broncos have 3 third rounders this year, I would be a lot more amenable to the idea of not only giving up draft capital, but then paying him the contract. But if it takes a second, it's just a matter of how many teams. Schefter reported today multiple teams have been calling the Lions. When you have multiple suitors, it drives the price up. So it's unlikely that the price is going to drop. It's going to, it's going to go up. It's not going to drop. So second round pick, a little too rich for my blood. If it's a third round pick, I'm still thinking, are you sure you want to give that up? Because that could be Justin Simmons in 3 years.
Right. And considering the Broncos' history, though, I would not want them to draft a corner in the third round. So I'd rather, if they're going to be one draft pick, rather be a third rounder. But yeah, it's still too rich. Like I said, second on its face is fine for Darius Slay. He's upper echelon corner in the NFL. But then it comes down to what he wants contractually. And considering the Broncos had a homegrown guy in Chris Harris Jr., who they're balking at right now, not willing to pay, what leads me to believe the Broncos are going to surrender that kind of draft capital and pay the guy $15 million? They wouldn't even incentivize Chris Harris Jr. beyond a 1 year pay increase for $3 million. So 15, I just think Elway won't approach that number, Chad.
I mean, in a perfect world, I think the fact that, as Machiavelli brings up, you've got Slay just barely turned 29 in January, whereas Chris Harris is going to be turning 31 between now and when the season starts. So to use your verbiage, Zach, it's his age 31 season, 2 years behind each other in terms of actual age. Darius Slay, if you're the Broncos and you're looking at risk reward and you're calculating that risk, it stands to reason that you're probably going to be better off investing in a younger player. However, you talk about Slay being a known quantity, that might be true, but Chris Harris is a known quantity within the Broncos organization.
Right.
Like, they've achieved some pretty big things together, and the Broncos discovered him and the whole 9 yards. So I don't know. It's a tough situation. In a perfect world, if you could maybe get him for a third round pick, it's something that I would look a lot harder at, but I don't want to give up a second round pick. And, right. I get it. The third round pick, I said it could be Justin Simmons. You never know what you're giving up. Could also be, as you point to, Zach, Isaac Gadam. It could be, Brandon Langley, a forgettable pick, a couple years down the road. But those picks in the first 3 rounds are premium round picks. They're supposed to be starters within that 4-year window of their rookie contracts.
And if you can get a guy like Okudah, or you get a player like Christian Fulton, let's say at 15, or you trade down a few spots to get him, I mean, you could still get a high upside cornerback who's on the cheap for the next couple years and who would fit the Broncos system just as well. They still have Bryce Callahan, too, who they signed to be a slot cornerback primarily, and that's where Darius Slay's wheelhouse is as well. So they already have a guy that's pretty brand new to the system. It's like they're getting Bryce Callahan this year, Chad. So to add Darius Slay on top of that, I don't know.
Let's see what Steven says here. Jumps in on Super Chat. Thank you, Steve. $5 donation. Appreciate you, brother. He says, who would you rather have, Darius Slay or Stephon Diggs? Elway will make moves this offseason. Getting neither one of those, of course, means a trade. They're both under contract. Diggs wants out, apparently, and Slay sounds like the Lions are open to talking to people anyway. And it was a topic of conversation. Don't ask me why, because true number one corners are not that easy to come by, and he's still under 30. So I don't know why Detroit's trying to get out of that business. But on its face, I would rather have Slay than Diggs, just because I think Slay covers an existing hole that you don't have another option for necessarily on the roster. Whereas Diggs, as good as he is, he's so similar in skill set, in my opinion, to Courtland Sutton that, would you like to have 2 Courtland Suttons? Absolutely, in a perfect world. But if you're talking about making this a better team overall and balancing this roster, give me Slay over Diggs.
Yeah, right after I just poo-pooed that potential trade, Steven puts it in a way where I would take Darius Slay. I don't want Stephon Diggs. He's another, highly paid guy who would demand a first or second round pick. But the difference between the two players is Diggs has diva issues. He has bad personality traits, whereas Slay, like you mentioned, Chad, he would fit an immediate hole, and he can come into the locker room and kind of mesh with the Broncos better, fit the Broncos system better. Between those two, I'm taking Slay, no question. It's just in a perfect world, things don't really align that way.
Ryan has a question on Facebook. Who do you guys work for besides Mile High Huddle? Nobody. Zach does work with Heavy, covering the NFL at large. Does a great job at that, by the way.
Thank you.
But this is what we do with our time, my dog. This is our baby. Discount Audio and Wheels. DA Dub jumps back in after an active day on Super Chat yesterday. Thank you, my friend.
You.
$50 donation. Hey, fellas, what do you think of a veteran corner on the cheap? A Josh Norman, a Talib type, and then drafting a corner in the third round to groom behind him. I'm not, as I talked about, a few pods back now, Zach's obviously not as amenable to this as I am, but I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Talib back, especially if you let Chris Harris go, bringing Talib back and seeing what kind of juice he's got left in the tank. I mean, if he can stay healthy, I think he can still be a more than solid corner in this league, groom some of the younger guys, team him up with Callahan. Norman, I'm a little bit more skeptical. Now, I don't dismiss anything out of hand. That's not me. I would consider it. And I think if you look at Vic Fangio's track record, Zach, of taking guys who were kind of trash heap, sort of best days behind them, like Prince Amukamara, and turning them around, there's other evidences, of course, for that, especially at cornerback for Vic Fangio. Maybe the same could be said for a guy like Josh Norman. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea, especially, they're going to have to make multiple moves at corner this offseason.
Yeah, I'm not totally against Talib returning. I just think between the way they ended the relationship, the Broncos and him, the bridges are kind of burned there. I don't think Elway wants to go back to that well and admit that, hey, since we've replaced you, we haven't been able to really find a competent guy. We have to bring you back because we have nobody else right now. So Elway's ego coming into play. I don't see Talib coming back. I want nothing to do with Josh Norman, Chad. I think his days are well past him in the rearview mirror, and I think he has major attitude issues. Everywhere he goes, every stop along the way, that locker room gets poisoned by his personality. I want nothing to do with him, but a Boye or someone like a Logan Ryan, someone a little cheaper on the open market, you pair him with a draft pick, that's the way to go as well. You could save some money.
Even though I just said I don't dismiss anything out of hand, and I'm not going to say completely I dismiss this, but the one name I'm really sour on is Logan Ryan. I don't like that. We can go through some numbers here. In fact, I want to before we get out of here. We'll do a quick share screen. There's some numbers I think our listeners need to be privy to. And by the way, Stu jumping in, our Super Chat superstar.
The best.
Supporting the show. We love you, Stu. I just got notified via email today, by the way. Your stuff is on the way. Sent me a tracking number. You're going to see that stuff this week. This hat, the blue hoodie. Make sure you send me an email. Make sure or tweet me or whatever. Tweet us, rocking that swag so that we can represent it on social media. Stu, we love you, brother. Let's see what Hunter has to say here. $25 donation on Super Chat. Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Great work. Hey, man, as long as you guys keep showing up and contributing to these conversations, we're going to keep showing up and doing this podcast. We love talking to you guys.
And drop us a question, Hunter, too, if you have one.
Let's see anything that's on your mind, dude. We're happy to grab it. All right, this is a good opportunity. Really quick, let me just shift gears for a second. Guys, I'm going to do a share screen here to show oops, that's the wrong button. Hold up. To show you, I want to illustrate. This came from Nikki Jabvala, did the research on this, pulled it from these stats. I want you guys, Zach, tell me, I'm not sure if you guys how well you can see that.
I can see it for the most part.
In the screen. All right.
Yeah.
So this isn't, of course, every free agent or every cornerback out there that could be available. In fact, Darius Slay is one of these here, and he's not even technically a free agent, as we know, even though he's being shopped. It shows Byron Jones, Chris Harris, Darius Slay, and Logan Ryan. And then it goes through and shows, different metrics: games started, defensive snaps, defensive targets, how many times they were tried by opposing quarterbacks, the target percentage. Couple things I want to draw your attention to here is Chris Harris Jr. and Logan Ryan were the only two of these to play and start all 16 games. And there's something to be said for availability. And Chris Harris, outside of that 1 year, 2013, in which he tore his ACL, he's been extremely durable for the Denver Broncos. If you look at total tackles, Logan Ryan leads the bunch, but he had 11 missed tackles. He was tried a bunch on that Titans defense. But look at Darius Slay. 46 tackles, 6 missed tackles. Harris had 2. Byron Jones, though, only 1. We go back farther to the right here. Burns. Now, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to know exactly what it means to be burned as a cornerback. Look who had the biggest number here. It's Logan Ryan, followed by Darius Slay, followed by Chris Harris, and then Byron Jones. And then it goes on to show burn touchdowns, which is it's Logan Ryan, followed by Harris with 4. And then Jones and Slay each with 3, and then defensive big passes given up, which is 20 yards or more. Harris and Slay each had 10. Zach, looking at those numbers, to me, what jumps out is all things being equal. I know it's the devil you know, not the devil you don't. But to me, I'm more interested in going out and trying to see if you can get Byron Jones locked up than giving up the farm or giving up even a second or third round pick to get Darius Slay.
I think for my money, I mean, upside wise and skill set wise and scheme fit wise, Byron Jones is worth the 15 per year versus giving up 15 and a second round pick to Detroit for Darius Slay. If I had it my way, you don't resign Chris Harris Jr. Byron Jones is the best cornerback on the open market, including Darius Slay. You pay him the money, that position's set. You have him, Bosby, Bryce Callahan, but you still have a second round pick or a third round pick with which to take another player. Could be a lineman, could be another cornerback, could be anything you want want. It's just one or the other for me. And for my money, Byron Jones is worth 15. You don't have to give up a draft pick for him as well.
And I don't think you have to wonder about it. You don't have to sit and worry man, did we just overpay for a number one corner? Like Byron Jones, and even if you look down here on this 3-year sample size from 2017 through 2019, Byron Jones, man, he emerges with the least amount of burned touchdowns. And you look also, I love that as far as missed tackles, only 11 missed tackles. Him and Chris Harris Jr., really solid tacklers, and that's important to Fangio. Meanwhile, look at Slay and Logan, significantly more. But the one thing that jumps out to me where I have to tip my cap to Darius Slay, Zach, look at these interceptions. He just has, and of course, this is inflated because I think it was 2017, Darius Slay's biggest season as a pro, might have been 2018. It was either 17 or 18, but within this 3-year window, he had 8 interceptions in 1 year. And so that kind of, beefs the numbers up, but still more 13 more than double the next closest guy interception wise. That's a ball hawk.
The real thing that stands out to me, though, is that Darius Slay was targeted so many times, Chad. So the more quarterbacks throw it, the more chances he's going to have to be picked off. I'd rather have the guy that's a pure shutdown. He's left alone on an island. No cornerback even thinks about trying him. And Byron Jones is that guy. Between him and a healthy Bryce Callahan, that's a very formidable secondary. And also when you consider the fact, you mentioned a great point about tackling, Byron Jones can moonlight at safety as well. So you're getting 2 players in one. I think that's well worth $15 million and the higher upside.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Every night, local police departments across America receive hundreds of calls from burglar alarms. The vast majority of the time, they have no idea whether the alarm is real. Is there really a crime going on or not? All the alarm company can tell them is the motion sensor went off. Simply Safe Home Security, though, is different. If you're like me, and you're one of those guys who's hypersensitive to every single sound and is tired of having to sleep with a knife under your bed, Simply Safe is the solution. If there's a break-in, Simply Safe uses real video evidence to give police an eyewitness account of the crime. That means police dispatch up to 350% faster than for a normal burglar alarm. You get comprehensive protection for your entire home. Outdoor cameras and doorbells alert you to anyone approaching your home. Entry, motion, and glass break sensors guard inside. Plus, Simply Safe protects your home from fires, water damage, and carbon monoxide poisoning. It's 24/7 monitoring by live security professionals. You can set up your system yourself, no tools are needed, or Simply Safe can do it for you. And it's only 50 cents a day. That's peace of mind with no contracts. Visit simplysafe.com/overtime and you'll get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. You've got nothing to lose. Go now and be sure you go to simplysafe.com/overtime so they know that our show sent you. That's simplysafe.com/overtime. So there's a lot of information that the Denver Broncos are going to be parsing through and analyzing. I mean, I think if you really boil it down, the best options for the Broncos on the free agent market or at the cornerback position, it's going to require paying some money. You got to pay the price. It's the cost of doing business. But it's Chris Harris and it's Byron Jones. Anything after that is, you're taking a little bit of a step backward. And Darius Slay, you're taking a big step backward because you're also having to give up a premium round draft pick to acquire him. So you guys got to keep that in mind. It's all exciting. We're not trying to throw a wet blanket on the excitement that is all this buzz that the Broncos are being tied to. But, you want to focus on things you can control. And the one thing you can't control is the price Detroit's going to be willing to give up that player. So keep that in mind. All right, let's see what else we got here on Super Chat. Bear with me, guys. A lot of questions, a lot of comments here. We're going to try to get to as many of you as possible. Josh jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Josh. He says, what if we zagged in this draft and took a bunch of big receivers to make a basketball team at the position?
And the Broncos kind of had it last year, Chad, with Sutton, Patrick, and Hamilton. So, it can't hurt to have big pass catchers, but you need a speedster type for sure. You have to have one.
Throw in Noah Fant, sure. He's basically going to be a big slot corner this year in Pat Shurmur's offense. But I think, Josh, it's fun to spitball something like that. But just based on what we're hearing from true insiders like Benjamin Albright, the Broncos are going after Tyreek Hill caliber long speed and short area quickness as opposed to the giraffe squad. Let's see what we got here. Josh, again, thank you, Josh. I appreciate the support, buddy. Can't watch Redskins highlights without seeing Josh Norman.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, that's what I'm saying. The only way that you talk yourself into Josh Norman is if you believe, or if Vic Fangio believes anyway, that there's enough there, enough experience, enough natural ability still left in the tank, enough savvy and willingness and openness to learn and accept coaching that you can make him a reclamation project. If not, go try someone, and you want a veteran like that, that might be more of a value type. Go after Aqib Talib, because at least Aqib Talib, the Broncos know he can play. It's a matter of, can he stay healthy, Zach?
And the thing about Norman, too, in a best-case scenario, he'd be a very serviceable number 2, number 3 cornerback. In a worst-case scenario, Chad, he torpedoes the locker room. So I don't really even consider betting on that type of prospect to pan out, even in Vic Fangio's no-nonsense defense. You talk about a stat about opposing quarterbacks targeting Norman. I think it was 70% quarterbacks were completing percentage balls against Josh Norman in coverage. His best days are well behind him. I want nothing to do with the guy, even on a 1-year prove-it type deal.
Our friend Larry, Broncos fan number 24 on YouTube, jumps in, $10 donation on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Larry. Says, damn, Machiavelli the GOAT making the rest of us look bad. LOL. Got to step my game up. Good work, as always.
We appreciate you, Larry. For sure.
Larry, that means a ton to us, bro. I mean, just you guys being here means the world to us, and supporting the show financially. I mean, we can't
just talking to you guys. Yeah.
We can't say enough. BNS says, having it out with Eric Trickle about Diggs. Want to know what you think. I agreed with the priests that Diggs was too much like Sutton. He says they're completely different. Your thoughts? Look, everyone's got their opinion, right? Everyone's got an opinion. Eric's very strongly opinionated. Those of you who engage with him on social media, he's got his viewpoints and he sticks to them. And so he might view it's different. And, if you want to break it down into the nuance, he might even have some points. However, to me, if you're looking at it, it's pretty close to apples. And you might be able to say that Diggs is faster, and he probably is faster than Cortland Sutton. But, when I think of Stephon Diggs, Zach, I think of that traditional X receiver, possession guy over the middle, can go up and get the ball, jump ball type of guy. And those are the main boxes in my book he checks, which is what Cortland Sutton checks. So you're covering the same areas. You want to complement, you want to find something different. But again, everyone's got different opinions. That's just the way I see it.
No disrespect to Trickle, but if you compare Diggs and Sutton, it's comparable. It's in the same ballpark. But if you could try to compare Diggs to Tyreek Hill, you cannot do it at all. And the Broncos need that guy, that Tyreek Hill guy, no doubt about it. Pure speed, get down the field. That it's not Stephon Diggs' game. He wins with his route running, his possession ability, and his catch radius. The Broncos have that beast in Cortland Sutton already. I respectfully disagree. I don't want Stephon Diggs. I want the guy in the draft. I want that pure speedster.
Glenn on Facebook says, hey guys, stoked to finally catch a pod live, given I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Nice.
I think they say Melbourne down there. I could be wrong. Anyway, Americanized Melbourne, Australia, with the time difference. If we got Slay and Diggs in free agency, what position would you like us to target? If you acquired Slay and Diggs on the trade market in free agency, both those guys are wanting new deals with whoever, if they land with a new team on the trade market, they want a new deal. So let's just say you're peeling off $15 million for Slay. You're probably peeling off $12 million for Diggs. So that's starting to eat into that $62 to $80 million that the Broncos could end up with. Two little roster moves there at $80 million. You're taking a chunk out of that, but I still think you got to focus on the main holes on this roster in free agency. To me, that would still mean defensive line. You got to have some answers there. You look at offensive line, see what kind of value you can find. I'm not sure about throwing money at a guy like Brandon Scherf. And other than that, still looking for value at the cornerback position.
And running back as well, Chad. So the Broncos, even if they get those two players under contract, spectacularly, they would still have holes throughout the roster. And that's why I feel like their money can be better devoted and their assets devoted better, considering as well the in-house guys they're going to bring back, whether it's Simmons, Harris, or Derek Wolfe. Even if they bring in Stephon Diggs and Darius Slay, they still have other holes to fill.
Angel, so you only answer questions if we donate money to your podcast. No, dog, but you got to understand what we see on our end is a endless stream of comments and questions, and we would love to get to everyone. We can't. We try to get to as many as we can, but when our listeners support the show financially, we're gonna feature their question first and foremost. That's just the way it is. Justin's Pro Football Scouting Analysis with a reminder, guys. Smash the like button, guys. Let's go. Appreciate that.
Smash it.
See you.
Thank you.
Let's see what we got here. Billy Ray. If you guys were Elway on draft day, what position are you addressing with the 15th pick? Again, assuming you've handled most of your glaring needs in free agency, what are you focusing on there? I mean, obviously you want to take the best player available. However, that's got to be a best player available at a relative position of need. It doesn't have to be a gaping need, but you're not taking the best quarterback or a quarterback because he's the highest graded player on your board. You got your quarterback. So it's within reason when you talk about the best player available. And for example, if they just went out and spent a ton of money on signed 2 top shelf corners, maybe you don't necessarily, and you got a corner there like a Jeff Gladney, TCU, or Christian Fulton, you're probably not using your first round pick on another corner. That's what I mean by it's best player available, but it's within reason, and that's how most teams operate. What's your answer, Zach?
It depends on free agency and where the Broncos go with the money they're going to have and how they devote those resources and how they allocate things there. If they feel like you said, Chad, they trade for Darius Slay, they're not going to probably take a cornerback in the first round. But if they don't, that's an option as well. It just depends on how the board breaks and what they do on the open market. But for my opinion, right now on February 17th, it's between a receiver and I think an offensive lineman at pick 15.
On Periscope, Twitter, Piper Danny. I would love Denver to sign Byron Jones and trade for A.J. Bouye. I don't think A.J. would take a high pick. Maybe not. You could probably get, I don't know, man, because if I'm the Broncos, by trading, obviously you're guaranteeing that you get the player. But the Jags right now are over $3 million over the cap. So they have to make some moves. I could see them cutting Bouye way before they make the decision to do anything on Calais Campbell. Both have been rumored to be possible cap casualties. So if I'm the Broncos, I like the idea of Bouye too, but I'm waiting that out till the 11th hour to see if they end up cutting bait so I can freely negotiate with them.
If I sign Byron Jones to $15 million a year at the minimum, I'm not trading another pick for a cornerback, Chad. That position will be fine if they have Byron Jones, they have Bryce Callahan and Bosby, and then the draft to fill those needs as well. If they want to sign Bouye as a free agent and Byron Jones, fine, but I'm not trading for the guy after giving another cornerback record-setting money.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Here it is, cartoon. 777s, he says, I love Chris Harris, but he struggled last year. Now, the reason I want to feature this comment is because this was something Harris talked about today in that conversation, the interview on 104.3 The Fan with, I think it was Nikki Jabvala and Justin Adams filling in because all the main hosts are off today because it was a holiday. Anyway, Chris Harris talked about how he was used in Fangio's scheme, and in years past, he would only play outside as corner when it was base package. And then anytime the opponent trotted out 3 wide receivers onto the field, the past defensive coordinators, we're talking Vance Joseph, we're talking Joe Woods, we're talking Wade Phillips, and then we're talking Jack Del Rio. They would rotate him inside to the slot anytime that they were in 3 wide. And from there, as he explained it, it gave the defense significantly more options on how to attack the offense when he was operating from the slot in those situations. Whereas he flipped the coin. He said, as this last year, Vic just wanted me to cover the number 1 wide receiver, hands down, no matter what. So each and every play, I was just kind of on an island outside, and it didn't allow me to basically, this is me paraphrasing Chris Harris, didn't allow me to play to my strengths. And, the unsaid thing there, Zach, is didn't allow the Broncos defense to play to its strengths either, because Chris Harris belongs inside. He belongs in the slot. Yeah, you play him outside on base defense, just like you saw all those years, every year except last year, basically. So it's interesting because that's a big deal to him, Zach, is he wants to know how he's going to be used. The next team he signs with, whether it's Denver or an outside team, he wants to be used to his strengths. He doesn't want to be outside guy, and I think you saw why. It's not his forte. It's not his strong suit. It's not where he's best, playing 90% or plus of his snaps. I think it's actually like 96% of his snaps outside corner. It just doesn't allow him to shine and do what he does best.
Right. Good points you made, Chad. And, I admit the Broncos put a lot on Chris Harris Jr.'s plate, playing inside, playing outside last year, having to play nickel roles and different sub packages. But he was burned on a consistent basis, especially in the second half of the season. And that's even fine, too. Players get burned. Even MJ missed shots. But what I didn't like was the fact that he would turn around and literally blame everyone in his vicinity instead of taking responsibility for his own actions. And that's what I didn't like what Chris Harris Jr. became. He wanted more money. He wants to be the number one cornerback in the NFL, yet he doesn't even take responsibility when he messes up. So that's what I didn't like and what rubbed me the wrong way and why I don't want to pay the guy $14, $15 million per year.
Yeah, and we kind of joked about this before we went live. We were talking about the interview today, and he was put on the spot and said, what are the odds? Give us like a percentage odds-wise where you're going to, whether or not you're going to end up back in Denver. And he kind of took exception to that, Chris Harris, like, hey, dude, that's not up to me. You need to ask that to John Elway. Like, that's not my decision. It's Elway's decision. And kind of, begging off, kind of pointing to the other guy like he just got burned for a touchdown. Like, it's not me, it's him. Right. And it'll be interesting to see, though. I mean, he's not completely wrong. He's right and he's wrong in that John Elway does need to express an interest to bring him back. But on the flip side of that coin, Zach, Harris went on to talk about how he believes every free agent or every NFL player at least once in their career should have the opportunity to enter unrestricted free agency where you get to see what your value is to the other 31 teams. So it's like, which do you believe?
Right. He's kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth. And, it's looking like he's using the Broncos as leverage to negotiate with outside teams. He's all about his money. He's made that clear. He's going to get paid. I just don't think he's going to get paid what he thinks he's going to get paid.
All right. Kyle Heckman jumps in on Super Chat, $10 donation.
Kyle.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Kyle.
You.
Hey, guys. Love the pods, articles, and short videos. Thanks for all you do. By the way, dusted off Madden franchise last night. Cut Wadman. So good. Yeah, in fact, Eric Trickle published a mock draft, 7-round mock draft, a pre-combine mock today at milehighhuddle.com. You guys go check that out. And he had the Broncos draft. I can't even remember the punter. I'll be lying to you if I tried to come up with a name. I can't remember. He had the Broncos taking a punter in the 5th round. And, I'm okay with that if it solves your punter problems for the next 4 years.
Now, I'm good with it, too. 5th is a little too early for my taste, Chad. I would prefer a 6th or 7th round pick, but the reality is that Wadman has to go, and it's pretty sad that Broncos fans are getting excited about cutting the guy in Madden. That's how bad he's really become.
West Side Philly jumping in off the top rope on Super Chat.
Thank you.
Proving that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is, in fact, a state of being. We got a lot of friends and a lot of listeners in Philly. You're not alone there. Appreciate the support, my friend. And it's good to see you. It's good to see you. All right, let's see what else we got here. Bernard on YouTube. Any thoughts on Denver getting Lynn Bowden in the draft? He seems to be exactly the kind of player we're looking at for at wide receiver, and I've only seen him mocked late rounds. Not sure what I'm missing. Bernard, if this is the wrong podcast in terms of Mile High Huddle, we got other Building the Broncos and Dove Valley Deep Divers know the entirety of this draft class, pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses. I'd save that for tomorrow night and get a more in-depth answer because I only have a surface knowledge of Lynn Bowden. So save that for Building the Broncos tomorrow night or circle back. I think Dove Valley Deep Divers is also doing a podcast Friday night. They're moving from Saturday to Friday. So we let those guys – we're like Cortland Sutton and the Broncos. We cover our lane. We stick on our lane. Those guys cover the areas that we can't.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chad, on that for sure. Check out the other pods. We'll have more information on that guy.
Aaron Lynch, one of our Super Chat superstars, jumps in.
Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate you, bro. He says, I think Byron Jones is the best athlete available at the position right now. Fangio has already shown what he can do with a freak athlete in Justin Simmons. I'm all for Jones. Aaron, I'm with you on that. Like, the more I look at Jones' numbers, especially stacked up like we're looking at that against some of the other contenders here, it's hard not to get excited. And it's hard to not think that the Dallas Cowboys can't come up with some way somehow to keep him. But Zach will be the first one to tell you he spends a lot of time covering the Cowboys as covering the NFL for heavy as well. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. He's probably going to hit the market.
You just can't pay everyone, and they have it's a bad timing situation for the Cowboys with having their franchise quarterback and their franchise wide receiver also hitting the open market as well, and they have like 20 other guys that are unrestricted free agents, and it's just they paid a bunch of players last year. They don't have the money to go around, and it's good news for the Broncos potentially to get a player like Byron Jones' caliber for whatever money he's going to cost. Mike
on Facebook, McHugh jumps in. He says, isn't Detroit in a win or else situation this year? trying to understand why they would shop Slay. Mike, the only explanation is there's something behind the scenes, personality-wise, that Matt Patricia or the GM doesn't like about Slay. It's kind of like, when Emmanuel Sanders was in Denver. The Broncos loved what he did on the field, but some of the stuff behind the scenes, they got tired of it. And over time, it wears on the team, and they need to change both the team and the player. And that's the only explanation, because you're right. Patricia is very much in a crap or get off the pot situation there, Zach. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, being a defensive-minded coach as well, you think he'd love to keep a centerpiece like that in tow, but that's why the Lions are the Lions, Chad. Maybe he's making too high of a contract demands. Maybe the Lions just don't want to pay the guy, but it's surprising, like he said, they would, get rid of one of their best players and really win now spot.
Damian Clark Warren jumps in on Super Chat with the $15 donation. Appreciate you, Damian. Says, I have to agree with you all about the cornerbacks. However, we need speed to run with KC's wide receivers. So what draft prospects can do that? At the cornerback level, listening to what our draft guys at Mile High Huddle are writing about and talking about, both on these podcasts and in written form, I think you got to look at the top of the draft. The top guys, Alcuda, not going to be there for Denver at pick 15. Mm-hmm. Then you start getting into Jeff Gladney at TCU, Christian Fulton. There are some other options out there, but I'm not sure there's any one corner that can do that. A lot of that's going to have to come from scheme, Zach. It's going to have to come from pressure.
Yes.
Honestly, that's been part of the problem is, as you've seen the proliferation and rise of the aerial attack there in Kansas City, it's also happened to coincide with Von Miller kind of doing this. The Broncos passed, and then, of course, Bradley Chubb being hurt this year. We're mystified that the Broncos went from single score losses to the Chiefs in 2018 to getting blown out both times this past season. It's like, well, if you really think about it, there was no Bradley Chubb. The pass rush was non-existent outside of Vaughn, and Vaughn was not his usual self. So getting back to the question here, Damian, is, it's Jimmy's and Joe's more than the X's and O's. But I think ultimately what's proven out over time with Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense, Zach, is you also have to have the X's and O's on point. And I think that even though the score differences this year would suggest otherwise, I think Fangio is the guy that can diagnose and figure out the best way to do that. But they need to restock the cupboards at the cornerback position.
Perfectly said, Chad, and you stole my point right from my mouth. It's all about scheme. And the Broncos, look what they did under Vance Joseph. They should have beat the Chiefs that year, and they didn't have the speediest corners or the best corners in the NFL covering those wide receivers. They can win with scheme. The Fangio defense has that scheme in place. Sure, they need speed. Sure, they need cornerbacks. They also have to defend Travis Kelce as well. So that comes down to scheme. You have to take into account all the Chiefs' weapons. It's not just speed. Fangio's defense will keep the Broncos in games. It'll keep the Chiefs lower on the scoreboard, but they're going to have the offense as well. That's where the speed comes in on offense with the wide receivers to take it from a 17-point game to a 24, 30-point game.
Great point. Brian jumps in on Super Chat, one of our superstars, longtime supporter of the show. Appreciate you, Brian. He says, all I want from free agency is Chris Jones and Byron Jones, or Darius Slay and A.J. Bouye in that order. I don't want much. Yeah, you've got PFF saying Chris Jones is the number one defensive free agent. And then Byron Jones, if you look at the numbers, it's hard to argue he's not the number one corner anyway. Yeah. So, you're not asking for the world, bro.
Byron Jones and Chris Jones, though, Chad, would be a hell of a haul, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but you know what? Here's what's exciting, you guys. John Elway's going to have the money to be a real player this year. Look, you got the fly in the ointment is this exodus of free agents. The Broncos are facing their own homegrown guys. But you get that figured out with Justin Simmons. You get Derek Wolfe or Shelby Harris brought back, and make a decision on Chris Harris. You still have more money in all likelihood will the Denver Broncos have after they cut Joe Flacco and decline Ron Leary's option than they had in 2014 when they brought in that quartet of DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, TJ Ward, and Emmanuel Sanders. When you think about that, man, Elway's going to have the chance here to really make some hay and be a player in free agency. Zach, thoughts on adding off-ball linebacker Corey Littleton, who's LA Ram, in free agency to pair him with Alexander Johnson. He's a guy, Corey Littleton, Zach, before I serve this over to you, that Mile High Huddle guys have been in on for a couple of years now. So I think he's a guy that would definitely fit. I still would rather see a guy like Joe Schobert, even though it might cost a little bit more. But you were just telling me, Zach, that you've been hearing that it sounds like the Browns might get him extended before he hits the market, Schobert.
Yeah, he expects the new GM there, Andrew Berry, to contact him about an extension. I would expect Schobert to remain in Cleveland, but I like the other players at the position, and Littleton especially. The only problem I worry about is money. He's going to want to be paid like a starter, and that's a position the Broncos don't only placed a super high premium on. They're going to cut, probably Todd Davis for $5 million, but add Corey Littleton for what, $7, $8, $10 million per year. That's not the way Vic Fangio likes to operate. He'd be great in the scheme, but I think the Broncos will find their next off-ball linebacker through the draft.
Okay, guys, one or two more, and then I have to get out of here for tonight. Let's see what's on Trevor's mind here. Jumps in on Super Chat with a $10 donation.
Appreciate you,
Trevor. Where do you guys project Drew Lock's stats next season? Honestly, I bought his jersey last May. Dude has it. I have him going off. 28 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, over 4K yards, thanks to Cortland Sutton plus Ruggs, Rager, or Ayuk, the Arizona State kid. We've fiddled around with this as well. We've talked about it at different times on the pod. I don't think it's outside the bounds of the plausible, Zach, to say, set the benchmark for Drew Lock, full 16 games with Pat Shurmur, and assuming they're going to upgrade some of the weapons and still knowing you got Sutton, you got Fant, you got Lindsey. I don't think it's outside the bounds of the realistic to say 30 touchdowns, 3,800 to 4,000 yards, if not more. I mean, it can be done. And again, I remain, not a bold prediction, but it would not surprise me, especially now that Shurmur's here, to see Drew Lock have the kind of quantum leap forward in year 2 that you saw from Patrick Mahomes in 18 and Lamar Jackson in 19.
I mean, in a day and age when Jameis Winston's throwing for 1 billion yards a season, Chad, what's so implausible about thinking Drew Lock can make the 4K club in his first full-time season as a starter with all the weapons around him? If he plans out on schedule, the Broncos get one of those receivers that they mentioned was in the comment, that he can have a 4,000-yard, 30-touchdown, 8-interception type campaign. I'd almost be expecting that from a fully developed Drew Lock in his first full season. He has a lot of weapons at his disposal and a lot of arm talent.
All right, guys, last one, and then we got to get out of here for tonight. From Glenn on Facebook, he says, wouldn't it be worth a 7th-round pick to secure the rights to A.J. Bouye? Yeah, I mean, if you could get him for a 7th-round pick, absolutely, all day, twice on Sunday. But I think again, we'll see how it shakes out because, it's a wait-and-see game. Everyone knows in the league, the other 31 teams, they all know Jacksonville's over the cap and that they're going to have to make some moves. So, if the Jacksonville Jaguars want to deal, Zach, teams are going to be calling their bluff, and they're going to have to be willing to accept maybe a little bit less than what they would normally to deal these guys because everyone knows that you're going to have to make some cuts anyway, and this is probably one of the guys you're going to cut. So, we can just wait it out or you can give him to me for – I doubt they'd let him go for anything less, and this is bare minimum. I think Aqib Talib, was it a 4th or a 5th-round pick? Mm-hmm. Something like that.
And considering any team that would acquire Bouye would take on his $67.5 million contract. Listen to these salary cap hits, Chad, for 20 and 2021. $15.437 and $15.5 million for the next 2 seasons. You're giving up a draft pick.
Say that again.
Over $15 million the next couple years in salary cap hits for A.J. Bouye if you acquire the guy. $67 million contract. Giving up a draft pick for that, I almost rather just pay Darius Slay. It doesn't make sense to give up any sort of draft pick and pay a guy almost $70 million when you have other needs elsewhere.
Good point. And, his best season was in 2017. It was 2017. His last year in Houston, I believe. It was the year before he signed with the Jags, and he's played 2 years. So, 2017 was his best year. The same for Darius Slay, by the way. Both of them peaked kind of at the same time. Yeah. And, 2018, he was good. When that Jags defense was playing top-shelf football, A.J. Bouye was still very good. This last year, though, I don't know if it was just, being kind of like with a one bad apple ruins the bunch type thing where your individual play suffers because of the team around you. But Bouye wasn't the same player this year. And that doesn't mean that, you look at Chris Harris, for example, 8 previous seasons of dominant level football, and then he kind of takes a step backward. You have to remain open to the possibility of it being an outlier, chalk it up to just a weird combination of circumstances. But you got to at least factor it in as a possibility that he's not the same player he was 2 and 3 years ago.
Have a $15 million salary cap hit. I'd rather just pay Byron Jones, who's younger and has better upside, Chad, in the system, and he doesn't have to give up a draft pick for him. So, Bouye, if he gets released, I'd want the Broncos to seriously explore that. But as a trade, they'd have to absorb a massive contract. I don't think Bouye, unless he restructures, is worth.
Discount Audio and Wheels DAW jumps back in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, brother. That means the world to us. And then also Brian says it would be sick to see the D-line with Jones, Miller, and Chubb. It really would. Man, that you can get excited and you start, fantasizing about the way this defense could look with some cap dollars getting invested in the right guys. And by the way, thank you, Brian. Yeah. But always going to be a player this year, Zach.
I mean, how about this? So let's say they draft Javon Kinlaw, you have Chubb, you have Von Miller, and then you have Byron Jones in the secondary. That defense from front to back would just be loaded.
All right, guys, we have to get out of here for today. Big thanks to each and every one of you for joining us live. We love talking to you guys. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. Again, best way to stay in touch with us in real time. And find my partner here, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at KelbermanNFL. Myself at Chad and Jensen. One of the funny things I've seen lately is, to me, when you're in Twitter, you're in that echo chamber. It feels like everyone in the world is on Twitter. But I've kind of been surprised. It's been a little bit of a reality check here, Zach. So many of our listeners, we say, are you on Twitter? If you are, hit it. No, I'm not on Twitter. Oh, well, get on Twitter.
Got to fix that, yes.
If you're not on Twitter, create an account.
Right now.
At HuddleUpPod. Follow Zach. Follow myself.
Right this second.
Another way to continue the conversation. Right, Zach?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great medium for that, and we like to interact with any one of our listeners. So if you guys want to get on that, sign up for Twitter and hit us up on there.
Reminder, guys, another way you can support the show and support MHH as a brand is to head on over to HuddleUpPod.com and get yourself a nice piece of merch. As you can see, nice hat. There's some hoodies. There's some T-shirts. We're adding things over time, so go check that out when you get some time. Here's what to expect the rest of this week. We are off. Zach and I, we're off tomorrow night, but you'll have Nick and Carl of Building the Broncos going live shortly, same time, 6-ish Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back in the saddle Wednesday night. So until then, you guys have a great start to your week, and you as well, my friend, Zach.
Appreciate you. See you later in the week, Chad, and everyone else.
Big thanks to our Super Chat superstars. Mile high salute. We will hit you up on Twitter. Another reason why you should be following us on Twitter so that we can at you and give you some love and credit on Twitter. So do that. For Zach, I'm Chad. We'll talk to you guys Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.